Today, we're unlocking the secrets of Revelation in a way you've never seen before. Get ready for prophetic insights that will reshape your understanding of the 144,000. When it comes to biblical prophecy, the 144,000 stands as a profound and mysterious piece. Today, we embark on a journey into the heart of Revelation, peeling back the layers of Scripture to reveal the true significance of this enigmatic group. Why were they sealed? Who are they? And what role do they play in the grand narrative of the end times? By the end of this video, you'll have a perspective that might challenge what you thought you knew. So stay tuned, because as we unravel the mysteries of the 144,000, you'll discover connections and insights that are nothing short of mind-blowing. Are you ready to rethink prophecy? Let's get started. So when you look at the 144,000, what we recognize is that we actually see them in two places in the book of Revelation. The first place is going to be in Revelation chapter 7, and the second place is going to be in Revelation chapter 14. We're going to start in chapter 7 and take a look at what's going on there. If you'll notice, the way the book of Revelation is laid out, we see that it goes in chronological order. Chapter 1 shows us the resurrected Jesus. Chapter 2 and 3 shows us the church on the earth. Chapters 4 and 5 show us the raptured church in heaven. Chapter 6 shows us the wrath of God coming down upon the earth as we start the tribulation period. But then here we are in chapter 7, and it seems like it's out of place. And indeed it is. Because if we look at verse 3, what we recognize is that in verse 3 of chapter 7, we're told that the angels that are holding back the four winds at the four corners of the earth, they are told not to allow the start of the tribulation until the 144,000 have been sealed. We see that in verse 3. So what does that tell us? What that tells us is that the events here that we're looking at right now, at the beginning of chapter 7, actually takes place before chapter 6. So then you might be saying, well, then why didn't John write chapter 7 before he wrote chapter 6? And the reason for that is continuity. And if you look at the flow of the letter, Jesus gets the scroll in chapter 5. He holds the scroll in his hands, and in chapter 6, he starts opening the seals. So it's a flow of the narrative. The problem is where to stick chapter 7 now. John has decided to stick chapter 7 after opening 6 of the 7 seals. We'll see the 7th seal is opened right after chapter 7 in chapter 8. So chapter 7 indeed sticks out like a sore thumb because chronologically it really belongs before chapter 6. It's one of those and meanwhile back at the ranch situations. If this was a Hollywood movie, we'd see what was going on in heaven. We'd see Jesus getting the scroll. We'd see him opening the seals. But then, meanwhile, back at the ranch, we see this happening in chapter 7. And what's going on in chapter 7? We're going to see the 144,000 get a seal that keeps them safe. So what is the seal that is placed on these 144,000? Well, we see back in Ezekiel chapter 9 that the concept of sealing certain people was to keep them safe and protected. In Ezekiel chapter 9, God says that he seals certain people who are his, then everyone else is going to be killed. Well, it's not very dissimilar to what's happening here. These 144,000 are going to be sealed. Now, remember, I said the timing of this is before chapter 6. So the timing of the sealing is right at the start of the 7-year tribulation period. If we recognize that at that point, God is going to seal these 144,000, then we can understand that anything that's going to happen during this tribulation period is going to not affect the 144,000. The 144,000 are going to be sealed from the dangers of all the seal judgments and all the trumpet judgments. So as we look at these 144,000, they're going to be doing that work that God is giving them to do without any injury or danger occurring to them. Their purpose is to share the gospel in this world. Who are these 144,000? They're Jewish descendants. If you look through the book of Revelation, there's 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes. So what that means is 12,000 times 12 equals 144,000. Now, some people don't take this literally, and so they believe that it's just a figurative number, meaning a lot of people, not necessarily Israelites, but we're going to look at it as a literal number of literal Jewish people. It seems odd to me to say that this is all just symbolic, and then to go through the process of naming 12 tribes and specifying that 12,000 from each one of these tribes are who God is talking about here. So I believe that it is a literal 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes of Israel. So they're Israelites. Now, what's their role? Their role is to share the gospel. Now, of course, at this point in time, Jewish people don't believe in Jesus. So what happens to make these Israelites believe in Jesus? Probably the rapture. When the rapture occurs, these Jewish people recognize that something has happened and it fits into everything that the Christians have said, and they start to understand that Jesus certainly is the fulfillment of Psalm 2, Psalm 22, Isaiah 53. And as they recognize Jesus from their scriptures, the Holy Spirit works in their lives to convict them, to draw them, and to bring them to a place of salvation. Now these 144,000 are saved Jewish people who go into the world to bring the gospel to the rest of the world that doesn't know who Jesus is. We see the results of their work right after this when we look at this great multitude. Who is this great multitude? Well, Revelation chapter 7 tells us that these are people who have died in the tribulation period. And it also tells us that they're from every tribe, nation, tongue. And so as we understand that the first group of 144,000 are from Israel, the second group of great multitude is from all the nations. What we see here is a picture of these 144,000 going out and doing such a work in the world that they bring a huge number of people to salvation. These people will die during the tribulation period, and so we see them at the throne of God in heaven, and it says that they're wearing a white robe. When John asks, who are these people wearing white robes? He's told that they are those who died in the tribulation. Now, we move forward to chapter 14. And when we move to chapter 14, we once again see Jesus. Now, this time we see Jesus on Mount Zion. Now, Mount Zion can be one of two things. It could be Mount Zion as in Jerusalem on earth, or it could be Mount Zion, the heavenly kingdom. So the question becomes, well, which Mount Zion is this? Is this happening on earth, or is this happening in heaven? Well, we're going to get the answer to that by just continuing to read, because next we see that, first of all, Jesus is on Mount Zion with the 144,000. So they're together. But John is on earth, and he hears from heaven a voice like many waters. And we know from chapter 1 whose voice that is. That's the voice of Jesus. If Jesus' voice is in heaven, we know that this is the Mount Zion of the heavenly realm. And therefore, the 144,000 are no longer on earth, but they are now in heaven. Now, this is taking place in chapter 14, which is the midpoint of the tribulation. So we understand is that though they are sealed and they cannot be hurt, that sealing is only for the first 3.5 years of the tribulation. After the 3.5 years of the tribulation, these 144,000 will be killed, and they will die, but they will be in heaven with Jesus. The other thing we see here is that the seal that was placed on them back in chapter 7, it wasn't defined, but here it is. Here we see that seal is the seal that has the name of God and the Lamb. And so we recognize that it is God who seals them with his name. He has his name on them. Nobody can touch them for 3.5 years. Next, we see they sing a song. We know only that it's a new song. We don't know what the song is, but based on what follows, we can understand that it is probably a song of redemption. So they sing a song of redemption before the throne of God, which is the only place this song can be sung. Next, we recognize that there are 3 these statements. Now, what are these statements? It describes who these 144,000 are. We've already seen that they are from the tribe of Israel, but here we get more information about them. Who are they? Well, the first these says that they are those who have not been defiled by women. Now, a lot of our Bible translations will actually call them virgins because they haven't been defiled by women. But is that right? I'd say that is not right, because that word parthenos that has been translated virgin indeed can and should be translated virgin, but not always. It also means pure. And if we understand it to mean pure, then we can understand that these men were kept pure. Well, nowhere in the Bible does God say that men should be celibate. Nowhere. What it says is sometimes it's good not to get married, but God has throughout the Bible said that we need to be fruitful and multiply. And so these people who haven't been defiled by women, it's not that they are virgins, but that they are good husbands, faithful husbands. The second of these statements tell us that they followed Jesus. What does that mean? It means that they're obedient to Jesus. It means that they follow him, as in they hear his command and do it. They are obedient people. The third of these statements says that they were first fruits to God. So what does that mean? Well, first fruits implies sacrifice, but it also implies that they have given themselves fully and totally to God. They are his first fruits. Everything that they do is for him. Everything that they are is for him. They have given the best of themselves to God. As we continue past these statements, we see one more interesting piece of information. There is no lie in their mouth. They do not lie. Why? Because liars are from Satan. Satan's lying from the deceiver is his natural language. So whenever we lie, we are speaking Satan's natural language. These 144,000 don't lie. So they're always with he who is the truth, God, Jesus. Finally, the last thing we notice is that they're blameless. They're blameless because they've been faithful husbands. They're blameless because they are obedient to Jesus. They're blameless because they've given everything to God. They're blameless because they do not lie. So they're blameless because of everything that we've seen here about the 144,000. What we take out of it is the 144,000 aren't special people who go to heaven while everybody else stays on earth. The 144,000 isn't the church. The 144,000 are specifically Jewish believers who go into the world to evangelize the world. And in the end, we see that though they are sacrificed and they do die for God, they are pleasing to God because they have been faithful husbands, they have been obedient servants, they have given everything to God, and they have not lied. It's a great role model for us to follow as we live our lives in these days. There are so many things going on in the world around us that's pulling us to the left and the right. But we should take the 144,000 as a role model that we also need to go out into the world and share the gospel with everyone who doesn't know it. We also need to be faithful spouses to our husbands, to our wives. We also need to be obedient to Jesus, doing all he has commanded us. We also need to give of our best to God, not just the leftovers on Sunday morning for an hour, but everything we are. And finally, we need to be truthful in all that we do. If we're doing all these things like the 144,000, then we can know that we too will be pleasing to God, an aroma to Him. And so thank you so much for joining us today. Please continue and come back to watch what happens next in the book of Revelation. God bless you.